What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast, man. We got a lot of things to discuss on today's episode. I'm sorry that we got started an hour later than what we normally do, but there was so much news coming out that we had to take a little bit of time to digest it all, wait for some more news to come out, and we got a lot of things to talk about on this episode. We got to talk about Colorado leaving the Pac-12 for the Big 12 Conference. Joe Burrow and Jalen Ramsey went down with some pretty concerning looking injuries. We're going to be providing some injury updates. Sean Payton took some shots at Jets offensive coordinator Nathaniel Hackett and the New York Jets as well. We're going to be giving my thoughts on that. The Bengals, I feel this is going to be their best chance to win the Super Bowl, pending if Joe Burrow is able to be healthy for this season. And then I'm going to be giving you guys my breakout players at running back for this NFL season and my outlook for the Chicago Bears going into this season. Before we begin, if you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Turn on post notifications. We go live every day, Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. Remember that we're not just available on YouTube. You can find the audio version of this podcast available on all podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find the JT Sports Podcast. If you enjoy today's episode of the pod, leave us with a 5-star review. We will greatly appreciate it. All you got to do is go to whichever podcasting platform that you use, type in the JT Sports Podcast and it should pop up. Or you can go down to the description down below, scroll down a little bit, and there will be the links to the Apple and Spotify versions of the podcast. Now, this is the first thing that we have to get into, right? Get my notes in order for this. Jalen Ramsey, one of the biggest offseason acquisitions by any team, went down with an injury today at training camp for the Miami Dolphins. And right now, we don't know the extent of Jalen Ramsey's injury, how severe it's going to be. He's currently getting MRIs on it as we speak, but it was not sounding good according to some of these reports. So Cameron Wolf of NFL Network, he reported earlier today that Dolphins cornerback Jalen Ramsey was carted back into the locker room after a practice injury. Trainers were attending to his left knee. He grabbed his left knee after defending Tyreek Hill on a pass play. Trainers evaluated him for a bit on the sideline. Then he hobbled on the cart. He then also said that Jalen Ramsey's apparent injury happened near the end of practice. He attempted to stay on the field initially, the incomplete pass, but after feeling his left knee for a bit, he headed to the sidelines to be looked at by the Dolphins trainers. Dolphins safety Javon Holland said they are worried about Jalen Ramsey, but they didn't know any details and they don't want to speculate. Holland said he dapped up Ramsey and they talked for a bit. They are waiting to find out what's going to happen with Jalen Ramsey's injury. And this is really, really concerning if you are a fan of the Miami Dolphins, and just if you're an NFL fan in general, because you never want to see a star player go down with an injury, especially if it's on the team that you root for. And the Dolphins, what do they have at cornerback that can allow them to survive this season if the worst case comes? And that is Jalen Ramsey being unable to go for this season. Now, we're not going to speculate, but we do have to talk about, the potential outcomes. What's going to happen for the Miami Dolphins if Jalen Ramsey isn't able to play this season? Are you going to throw Cam Smith up there? Cam Smith, he was drafted by the Dolphins in this past year's NFL draft out of South Carolina, and I think he's a really good cornerback. As a matter of fact, I had a round 2 grade on him. And if the Dolphins have to start him because, let's say, the worst case scenario happens, Jalen Ramsey has to miss some time even worst case, the rest of the year, Cam Sutton can come in, or Cam Smith, excuse me. He can come in and can produce at a pretty solid level for the Miami Dolphins as a rookie. Now, of course, if Cam Smith has to start in replace of Jalen Ramsey, you're not going to get the same caliber of play from him that you would have gotten from Jalen Ramsey. But for a guy like Cam Smith, being able to come in and play well as a rookie in Vic Fangio's system, I think would be really impressive, considering the magnitude of the situation and the expectations that people have for this Miami Dolphins defense entering this season. Now, let's say Jalen Ramsey is able to get great news and he ends up being able to return from this injury. Then the Miami Dolphins, as long as they continue to not deal with injuries, should be able to be a legitimate Super Bowl contender this year. This is not a dark horse Super Bowl team. This is not a sleeper pick. This is a team that has the capability of being able to beat Kansas City on the road in Arrowhead if they have to do it. And they can also beat any other team in this conference. They arguably have the most talented team going into the NFL this season. And for Jalen Ramsey, going down with this injury is a major blow to the Dolphins' Super Bowl aspirations if he does end up missing significant time. And there's a lot of concern about this. When you talk to Dolphins players, they don't want to speculate, but most of them are kind of starting to think the worst. And like I said, we're not saying that Jalen Ramsey is going to miss a lot of time, but we're also are going to have to speculate what are going to be the Dolphins' next moves if the worst news comes out about this. And if the worst news comes out that Jalen Ramsey is going to miss significant time, or he's going to miss the whole entire season, then we have to know who's going to be the guy potentially replacing him. And I think it's going to be Cam Smith. I don't think we're going to see Noah Igbenogany out there. I think it would be really crazy to see him starting in replace of Jalen Ramsey, considering how he played last year. If the Dolphins aren't comfortable with Cam Smith potentially having to replace Jalen Ramsey, I expect them to hit the free agency market pretty fast to find a replacement if they don't have confidence in Cam Smith being able to come in and produce as a rookie. Because Noah Igbenogany is a liability out there if you got to start him as one of your outside cornerbacks. So right now, according to the news that's coming out at this moment, there are no further updates on Jalen Ramsey's injury. The last reports that we have about Jalen Ramsey and his injury status have been that he's under evaluation. They're taking x-rays, MRIs on his left knee to see what's going to be the outcome for this. Is he going to miss any time that's going to be significant? Is he going to miss any time at all? Is it just one of those injuries that he'll end up bouncing back from in a couple of days? And then if the Dolphins do get the worst news, I think Cam Smith is most likely going to be his replacement. I don't think he's going to be an elite cornerback right out the gate, but I do think that he will be pretty solid if he has to fill the shoes of Jalen Ramsey this season. Another injury. This was really devastating, man. If you thought Jalen Ramsey going down was scary, Bengals fans, right now they are biting their nails because Joe Burrow got injured with the calf injury. And the way he got injured was really devastating to watch if you're a Bengals fan. And I'm not trying to say that to over dramatize this, but if you go and you watch the injury video on YouTube and Twitter or Instagram, it's out there. Joe Burrow, he's rolling outside the pocket trying to make a play, and then all of a sudden he ends up hopping on one leg and then he goes down to the ground. And I'm just like, no, not Joe Burrow, not Joe. And not just is this a bad injury for the Cincinnati Bengals in terms of them going into this season with Super Bowl aspirations, but Joe Burrow is about to get paid. Now, I do expect, despite how this injury plays out, for Joe Burrow to still get all the money that he's asking for. But for Bengals fans, you're hoping and you're praying to God and you got your fingers crossed that Joe Burrow isn't going to miss a lot of time with this injury. Now, the news that we got about this is, according to Ian Rappaport, Bengals coach Zach Taylor tells reporters that Joe Burrow suffered a calf strain, which is much better news than several alternatives have to imagine. This takes him off the field for the preseason, to be decided on the time frame. Now, despite this coming out, they still are going to do further examinations of the calf injury, and they're going to see how long is it going to take for Joe Burrow to return. They didn't say it was an Achilles injury, which is the fear that Bengals fans have about Joe Burrow going down. Is Achilles injury going to end his season? But it looks like right now, the reports coming out is just that this is a calf injury. It's a calf strain. So hopefully Joe Burrow isn't going to go down with a major injury that sidelines him for any time throughout the regular season. Hopefully he can bounce back from this. There still hasn't really been any updates as far up to this moment about Joe Burrow's injury. Is this going to be an injury that is going to sideline him for a couple weeks, months? We don't really know about that. At this moment, the only information that we have is that Ian Rappaport is reporting that Zach Taylor is telling everybody that this is a calf strain. And earlier, before I started recording, the updates were that it was a calf injury. We didn't know what kind of calf injury it was and how severe it was. So now they're saying that this is a calf strain. I looked up how long it takes to recover from a calf injury. And if this is truly a calf strain, Joe Burrow should without a doubt be ready come week 1 of the regular season. But if this is a Achilles injury, which is the worst fear for Cincinnati fans, then you probably won't have him at all, which is going to be a really big bummer for me because I had the Bengals as my Super Bowl pick. I know I'm not supposed to be giving out my record predictions yet, but the Bengals were my selection to win it all this year. And we also got a segment about them on today's episode. So we're going to hope for the best when it comes to Joe Burrow's injury. They say right now it's just a calf strain. Let's hope it's that, or maybe something a little bit better and anything worse that's going to force Joe Burrow to have to miss significant time this season. Colorado has officially rejoined the Big 12 Conference. Now, they used to be in the Big 12 until they left for the Pac-12 in 2011. And we already know that with this move, this pretty much is the nail in the coffin for the future of the Pac-12 football conference as we know it. But looking at the Big 12, this is a really huge addition. Not only are you getting Colorado to join your conference again, but you're getting them with Coach Prime as their head coach, which is going to bring a bunch of ratings to your conference. And they are going to be eligible to play as soon as next season, because that's when the Pac-12's media rights deal expires. So we're going to see Colorado suiting up for Big 12 action as soon as next season. And they already got UCF, Cincinnati, and BYU who are going to be playing their first seasons in the conference. And now they add another team to the mix. And this isn't really a surprise. It was more of a matter of when it was going to happen versus if it was going to happen. And Colorado isn't the only school that the Big 12 has been in talks with to expand their conference. They also have interest in what they call 4 corner schools, which are Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. And you have to expect that Colorado isn't the only team that's going to leave the Pac-12 for the Big 12. Arizona could be next up due to how well they do in basketball. And from a football sense, Jeff Fish has that program on the rise. So look out for Arizona to be the potential next team who could join in Big 12 conference expansion. And the Big 12 is being a little bit overlooked when you're thinking about these big power conferences in college football. We already know how big of a juggernaut the Big 10 and the SEC are, but the Big 12 kind of has become into a league of their own, because you got to remember that the Big 12 is also about to be as big as the Big 10 and the SEC. And at the time I'm recording this, there are reports coming out now that Florida State is looking to leave the ACC for either the Big 10 or the SEC. So, of course, expansion is not going to stop. Colorado, they rejoined the Big 12, a conference that they had a good amount of success in at one point. And they're leaving the Pac-12, where they pretty much were not really all that relevant in. And this is just a better situation for the school. Now, are they going to be able to land the Arizona State, or Utah? If you're the Big 12 commissioner, you probably should. The Pac-12 isn't pretty much going to be able to keep anybody around. They're struggling to get a new media rights deal, and it looks like that conference is on the way out. Now, for schools like Washington and Oregon, are you going to follow suit and join the Big 12 conference also, or is there some room for you in the Big 10? Now, Colorado joining the Big 12 conference, this isn't their first time being in this conference. They already have played in the Big 12 before, so it's pretty much like they left the Big 12 for the Pac-12 for a couple of years, and now they're right back like nothing happened, like they never left. And Coach Prime being in the Big 12 is going to put more eyeballs on him, because playing in the Pac-12, let's just keep it a spade. Unless you're UCLA or USC, nobody was really paying all that much attention to you. Oregon, Washington, Utah, of course, they're going to get a couple of eyes on them here and there due to the fact that they have been two of the most successful programs in this conference over the last decade. But you got to remember that USC was the biggest school in this conference. And once USC and UCLA walked out the door, things were already in motion for the Pac-12 to go downhill. There was no way any team was going to, in their right mind, remain in a dying conference when you lose your most important member. So there's no USC. Do you know how much money that took off the table in terms of what the Pac-12 could have gotten in their media rights deal? And then if you're ESPN, I mean, what interest do you even have in wanting to even buy the rights to broadcast Pac-12 games? There's not a lot of big name teams in this conference when you take away USC, and then UCLA's out the door, and then you just lose Colorado. This makes the conference even more unappealing to want to purchase the rights to show the games to a national audience for. So Colorado is now a member of the Big 12, and I think that they're not going to be the only Pac-12 school to make a jump into the Big 12 conference. I definitely think that Arizona is very well going to be on their way, and I think that Utah and Arizona State are most likely going to follow suit as well. If you are still a Pac-12 truther after this, you are truly a diehard fan, but there's no way a Boise State or a San Diego State is going to be enough to keep your conference afloat as far as it being considered a Power 5 conference. I'm pretty sure you add San Diego State and Boise State to the conference, Washington and Oregon, they're not doing anything but preparing their exiting strategy out of this conference. If you still think that the Pac-12 is going to be able to survive after this, I don't know what to tell you. Either you're just a Pac-12 lover and you got a lot of nostalgic memories towards this conference, or you're just being a little bit delusional. The Pac-12 is done. This move officially put the nail in the coffin for the Pac-12's fate. They don't have the luxury of being able to say, well, we got all these schools paid with our new television deal. No, you don't. You're struggling to negotiate it as we speak. So you can't get a new media rights deal. You lose USC, UCLA, and now Colorado. It's like, it's done. It just is. There's no way the Pac-12 is going to be able to survive after this. So Colorado is now a member of the Big 12 Conference, and they can begin Big 12 play as soon as next year during the 2024-2025 college football season. So let me know your thoughts on Colorado opting to leave the Pac-12 and rejoin the Big 12 Conference. Sean Payton was talking spicy. So in a interview that he did with USA Today, he took some shots at Nathaniel Hackett, offensive coordinator for the New York Jets, and also took some shots at the Jets franchise as a whole. Now, new Broncos head coach Sean Payton opens up about how badly he thinks the 2022 Broncos were coached via Jared Bell. And I quote, "They can only beat the shit out of you so much, but everybody's got a little stink on their hands. It's not just Russell. It was a poor offensive line. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was." Now, there were a lot of people who responded to this, and there were a lot of mixing opinions about this. 50% of people out there say that Sean Payton looks really small making these statements about Nathaniel Hackett. Is like, we get it. Nathaniel Hackett was an awful head coach for the Denver Broncos. We get how bad that team was under his coaching. He's gone now, Sean. You don't got to continue to take shots at the man. He's no longer a head coach anymore. He's the OC for the New York Jets, Sean Payton. Let it slide. You don't have to keep going at him. But Sean Payton, on the other hand, for the people who like these comments, they're saying, man, everybody's been taking all these shots at Russell Wilson. Sean Payton had to stand up for his guy. And you're also saying you don't see nothing wrong with these comments. This is Sean Payton, trying to clear the air with what happened last year and pretty much saying, hey, we're not going to have none of that this season. And plus, earlier throughout the article, as a matter of fact, one of the first couple of sentences into this article, Sean Payton says he'll be pissed if the Broncos aren't a playoff team this season. Now, when you think about these comments, and I'm going to put them back on screen, I honestly don't feel like there's anything wrong with this. And I get where players like Ryan Clark, who used to play in the league, are coming from, and current Jets players taking up for their offensive coordinator. But I mean, Sean Payton had to go out there and stand up for his quarterback. Everybody's taking all these shots at Russell Wilson, thinking that he's a bomb, he's washed up, when honestly, he's not. There's still a lot left in the tank for Russell Wilson in terms of Sean Payton being able to still get Russell Wilson playing at the level that he used to play at before getting traded to the Denver Broncos. So, of course, Sean Payton is going to stand firm and support Russell Wilson and support his team. Russell Wilson wasn't the only problem with the Denver Broncos last year. The offensive line was terrible. The coaching was terrible. The play calling was awful. The clock management was abysmal. Everything that could have went wrong for the Broncos in 2022 went wrong. And then some. And Sean Payton is coming out pretty much saying, hey, don't try to put everything on Russell Wilson for what went wrong last season. You also got to point the fingers at the owners who made the decision to hire Nathaniel Hackett. You got to put a lot of the blame on Nathaniel Hackett. And I get where Sean Payton is coming from when he makes these comments. And I can get why former players, current players, and people who are in the NFL world can take these comments as Sean Payton being unprofessional. Billy Turner, offensive lineman for the New York Jets, responded to Sean Payton's statement saying that seems like someone started training camp and is trying to soften the blow after realizing what he's in for this season. You're effing bum. You're effing bum. Hashtag Bountygate. Hashtag childish. Now, do you guys think that Sean Payton's comments were childish? I think they kind of were. I don't think he had to continue to bury a dead horse. We already know that Nathaniel Hackett was a terrible head coach, but it's done, it's over with. He's now the OC for the New York Jets. Why continue to pile on him? Why continue to bury a man when he's already down? And Nathaniel Hackett is one of those coaches that he's a really likable guy. He's somebody who can get you motivated. He can get you believing in yourself. Nobody ever said Nathaniel Hackett didn't work out because he wasn't a great person. This dude was a fantastic person. The players loved his personality. This dude is really bubbly, really joyful, always has a smile on his face. So for Sean Payton to take shots at Nathaniel Hackett, of course, players are going to be a little set off about it, especially if they're playing under him or if they used to play for him. But Sean Payton, though, he has a little bit of dirt on his resume. Even though he wasn't a bad coach like what Nathaniel Hackett was, he has done some things that weren't always correct. We remember Bountygate. We remember how ugly that situation was. We remember the Saints paying players to intentionally take the opposing team star players out of the game by pretty much paying players to injure them. So that was a really ugly situation. And of course, most people are going to bring that up when it comes to talking about Sean Payton. But here's the thing that some people tend to forget. Nobody cares a lot about Bountygate anymore in the year 2023. You want to know why? Because Sean Payton was able to bounce back from that. He was able to still have success after the Bountygate scandal. So nobody really brings up Bountygate all that much. Now, in a situation like this, people are going to bring that up to clap back at him for making these remarks. And Robert Saleh came out and he responded to these comments in a professional way, a way that you expect a guy like Robert Saleh to respond, pretty much saying, hey, we're not worried about all that. We're only worried about what's taking place in this organization under this roof with the New York Jets. He also said that the New York Jets are being a little bit of a PR publicity stunt, you know, with the Hard Knocks situation, having Hard Knocks around, monitoring what's going on throughout training camp. But I don't think the New York Jets wanted Hard Knocks. And if I'm not mistaken, you know, they didn't really want to choose to be on Hard Knocks this year. They kind of were forced to. So I kind of have to disagree with Sean Payton. But when it comes to his statements about Nathaniel Hackett, I don't really see anything wrong with them. Are they professional? Absolutely not. But I definitely think he's getting tired of getting these questions about Russell Wilson. Is he washed up? Is he a bum? And he's basically trying to tell people, hey, Russell Wilson was in a really bad situation last year. A situation that was so bad that maybe not any quarterback would have been able to have success under Nathaniel Hackett. So I think this is Sean Payton kind of taking a little bit of frustration out on Nathaniel Hackett, given the fact that he was given the opportunity to. Now, he didn't have to do this, but he was given the opportunity. He basically was telling the reporter, hey, man, like, you can ask whatever you want. And the dude who was writing this article pretty much got the kind of response that if you're a journalist, you're happy to get out of a guy like Sean Payton. And Sean Payton is one of the greatest head coaches to ever coach the game of football. So these comments are going to sting really heavily if you're Nathaniel Hackett. You just got buried by a Hall of Fame caliber coach, and these statements by him kind of make you look bad in the eyes of many people who may not understand the magnitude of how that situation went with the Denver Broncos last season. You know, there are a lot of reasons that go into why a head coach is successful and why they don't work out. From the outside looking in, we remember last season being a complete laughingstock when you watch the Denver Broncos. Every time they played with Nathaniel Hackett on the sidelines, they were awful. But we don't know what went on behind the scenes. Was there some things that held Nathaniel Hackett back? Were there some instances that were a little bit out of his control when it came to how the ownership wanted certain aspects of the team ran? We really will truly never know these things until they come out publicly. But there are always a good amount of contributing factors that goes into why coaches get fired that a lot of fans like myself and you watching don't know, because the information is not available to the public eye. So when you look at the guys who are defending Nathaniel Hackett in this situation and saying that Sean Payton looked really small in this situation, you get where they're coming from. You don't know what situations Nathaniel Hackett was dealing with internally when he was the head coach for the Denver Broncos. So for Sean Payton to take these kind of statements and, throw them out there for the national media to read and see, and now everybody knows how Sean Payton feels about Nathaniel Hackett, it makes Nathaniel Hackett look really bad when it comes to his reputation. Nathaniel Hackett can bounce back from being a bad head coach, but when it comes to getting buried by a head coach that has the kind of resume and accolades that Sean Payton has, if he doesn't work out with the New York Jets, he may not get another opportunity to be an offensive coordinator or having a high ranking position on any staff if it doesn't work out with the New York Jets, because people are going to think about what went wrong during his time with the Denver Broncos, and they're going to think about Sean Payton's statements. The kind of statements that Sean Payton made are the kind of statements that can keep somebody from finding employment with somebody else. And I think that's the aspect that a lot of people aren't thinking about when it comes to us as fans looking at this situation from a fan perspective. You see, me and you, we're looking at this as entertainment because we're not in the NFL. We're not coaches. We're not employees. So we're not going to face any backlash from this. Nathaniel Hackett, on the other end, though, being in the business, being the current offensive coordinator for the New York Jets, there's going to be a lot of repercussions from Sean Payton's comments. His comments could keep him from finding another job if it doesn't work out in New York. Anytime Nathaniel Hackett has to go in for an interview, he's going to be asked, so what happened with the Denver Broncos? What went wrong? And he's going to have to be able to answer to that. That's enough pressure in itself. That's enough that he already has to deal with. But then you got employers who are going to be taking into account Sean Payton's statements. That's not going to be a good look. And it's not going to help Nathaniel Hackett land another opportunity if it doesn't work out calling plays for the Jets this season. And Billy Turner clapping back, of course, if you are a player and your head coach has another coach taking shots at him, you're going to defend him because this is your coach. This is somebody who you play under. Of course, you're going to be able to, take shots back and defend them. What are you supposed to do if you're a player? You're not going to say, oh yeah, Sean Payton is right about my head coach. You're going to defend your coach. Every player that loves their coach is going to do that. Now, what are Maya's thoughts on this before we move on is this. Sean Payton's comments were unprofessional. Even though I don't see anything wrong with them, they definitely were unprofessional. I definitely think there are some unsung rules that coaches are kind of expected to follow when it comes to certain things that they say about former coaches or former coaches who used to work under them. And in a business like the NFL, when you're somebody that has so much pull like Sean Payton has and you have so much respect, these are the kind of comments that really hurt Nathaniel Hackett. Not just from an employment standpoint, but from a finance standpoint as well. Because, like I said earlier, if Nathaniel Hackett doesn't work out calling plays for the Jets, this may be his very last opportunity to have a position on the coaching staff this high. You look at Sean Payton burying you, it doesn't get no worse than that. This is a future Hall of Fame coach who just ripped you to shreds, said that you were a large part of the reason for why Denver was not successful and why they were a laughingstock. Do we gotta read these quotes again? They can only beat the blank out of you so much, but everybody's got a little stink on their hands. It's not just Russell. It was a poor offensive line. It might have been one of the worst coaching jobs in the history of the NFL. That's how bad it was. I don't think that Sean Payton completely buried Nathaniel Hackett, but when you think about the kind of pull he has, the fact that a lot of people have a lot of reverence for Sean Payton, for what he's done as a coach in this business, this is definitely one of those kind of comments that is going to hurt Nathaniel Hackett when it comes to finding employment opportunities outside of New York. Doesn't look good. So, of course, people are going to have to stand up for Nathaniel Hackett, and we're going to see over the next couple of days if he even responds. What more players are going to respond about Nathaniel Hackett, and what's going to come out about Sean Payton? Because, you know, one thing about it is that you're not going to take shots at a guy like Nathaniel Hackett, and no former players or former coaches who used to play or coach under you aren't going to clap back and air out some of your dirty laundry or some of the things that you've done wrong. That's just how it goes. This is a business. People kind of want to try to save Nathaniel Hackett's face, so if it doesn't work out, he can still find employment elsewhere. But for Sean Payton, making the comments that he made, it definitely was unprofessional. I'm not going to say he was small because of it like Ryan Clark did. He was just telling the truth. And that's something that people seem to forget about Sean Payton. This dude is super authentic. He isn't one of those coaches that you talk to after the podium. He's going to give you the button-up, suit and tie answers. No, he's going to tell you the truth. He's going to let you know which players he felt like played like crap, who played well, and if he did a terrible job preparing his team. That's what you get out of Sean Payton. Blunt honesty. And for guys like Sean Payton, when they get interviewed, especially by national media outlets, it kind of looks really bad when you look back and you read his quotes or the statements that he gave to this reporter for this story. But at the end of the day, though, the NFL is a performance-based business. And if you don't perform, guess what happens? People don't really look at you in the same light. And for Nathaniel Hackett, you know, Sean Payton making these statements about him, I think kind of shows people how he feels about Russell Wilson. He feels like Russell Wilson, yeah, he regressed a little bit, but a large reason for his play was because of Nathaniel Hackett. So in a sense, Sean Payton is kind of putting more pressure on himself in this situation. So if Nathaniel Hackett was so bad as a head coach, Russell Wilson should be able to bounce back into form this season, just like how he was against the Seattle Seahawks. If Nathaniel Hackett was the problem, then Sean Payton should be able to fix Russell Wilson. And if Sean Payton ends up having a season that goes a little bit similarly or a little bit similar to what happened last year in Denver, it's going to look really bad on him, and we're going to come back and we're going to look at these comments and we're going to say, man, I thought it was Nathaniel Hackett who was the problem, but you couldn't have success neither. And then we're going to laugh at Sean Payton, and then he's going to get clowned for it, and then it's going to kind of hurt his legacy in a sense. You shit on another coach, and yet you can't even do a better job, or a job that was even better than what the previous coach did. It's like Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos were bad, but if they remain as bad this season as what they were last year, it's going to look even worse on Sean Payton. So if Nathaniel Hackett is this novice as a head coach, right, that people make him out to be, Sean Payton, being a Hall of Fame level coach, being an experienced coach, should be able to get the Denver Broncos back into the playoffs this year with no sweat. If Nathaniel Hackett was just so bad and the factors he had around him were so bad, then Sean Payton did have to come in and change a lot of things. But his comments, man, there's a lot of repercussions that are going to stem from these statements that he made to the USA Today. He's going to put more pressure on himself, higher expectations, because he did say within the first couple of sentences in this article that he'll be pissed if this wasn't a playoff team. And you guys can read this article for yourself. I'm going to link it down in the description for those of you guys who are going to be watching this segment after it comes out, released individually. But I don't really see anything wrong with Sean Payton's comments, in my opinion. Like I said, were they professional? No, they weren't. But I'm not in the NFL. I'm not an employee of the NFL. So I can't really say his comments were unprofessional like a guy like Ryan Clark can, because I've never been in the NFL. So I don't understand, or I don't really know what is appropriate for a coach to say about a former coach and what isn't. So you guys let me know your thoughts on Nathaniel Hackett getting shots sent by Sean Payton. What would you do? How would you feel if you were Nathaniel Hackett in this situation? Joe Burrow, even though he went down with a really scary injury earlier today in training camp, we're going to cross our fingers and pray to the football gods that he's going to be healthy enough to play come the start of the regular season. And if you guys didn't see our report or our update on Joe Burrow's injury, go ahead and make sure that you guys go ahead and check that out. But Zach Taylor said that he's dealing with a calf sprain, so he should be able to play come week 1 of the regular season. And we're going to go based off the belief that Joe Burrow is going to be Cincinnati's starting quarterback for this season. Because I think that the Bengals, with Joe Burrow, have a great chance at being able to finally win it all this season. And I was listening to Nick Wright last night, actually, talk about how he feels if the Bengals don't get it done this season, they may have an even difficult chance at being able to get it done in the foreseeable future, due to the fact that they have a lot of their top guys who are going to be free agents next year, and they aren't going to be able to keep all of them due to all the money that they're going to be throwing out to pay Joe Burrow. So for the Cincinnati Bengals, I think this most definitely is their best chance to win the Super Bowl going into this season. You finally have improved the offensive line. You thought you had the offensive line situation figured out last year, but you go to the postseason and you're down a couple of starters, and then you weren't really getting good play out of some of the guys that you signed, such as La'el Collins at right tackle and Jonah Williams, who was a former first-round pick, who was one of the worst left tackles in the NFL. You bring in Orlando Brown, you pay him a lot of money. You think that he finally is going to be able to be that answer for you at left tackle. And if he is, then this is going to be one of the best offensive lines in the league this year, despite the fact that you have concerns about the production that you're going to be getting out of your right tackle position. There's a position battle going on for the right tackle spot between Jonah Williams, La'el Collins, whenever he gets back to full strength. And I think that Jonah Williams is probably going to end up winning that position battle. But either way, even if you don't get great play out of your right tackle position, all you're hoping for is serviceable play out of the right tackle spot. You look at receiver, we know the Bengals have the best receiving core in the NFL. Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd. I like the addition of bringing in Irv Smith to replace Hayden Hurst. I think there's a lot of upside that comes with having Irv Smith. Irv Smith had some things that didn't go right during his time with the Minnesota Vikings, and I think that he was kind of underutilized when he was playing for the Vikings. Going to an organization like the Cincinnati Bengals that was able to squeeze a little bit of juice out of Hayden Hurst last season when he had the ball thrown his way, I think that Irv Smith could have a better season than what Hayden Hurst had last season for the Bengals, because I believe he's a better overall player than him. And you look at Joe Mixon, you got Chase Brown in the backfield now. This should be a really fantastic offense. And this probably could be the best offense that the Bengals have had since they've drafted Joe Burrow. And the reason why I make that statement is because you got to remember, the Bengals offensive line has been an issue ever since Joe Burrow got drafted to Cincy. His rookie season, he was out for the season due to a hit that Chase Young put on him. And it was because the offensive line was so bad. So this is the best offensive line that Joe Burrow is going to have going into this season that he's ever had so far throughout his Cincinnati career. Your offensive guards are really good. Your tackle situation should be straight on the left side. We don't know how the right tackle spot is going to play out, but hopefully you can get improvement from that position. Jonah Williams, maybe he's better suited for right tackle than he is left tackle, but we'll see how it plays out. And another reason why, if you're a Bengals fan, if Joe Burrow is healthy, why you got a lot of confidence in Cincinnati's chances of being able to win it all is due to the fact that you return both of your coordinators. DC Luanarumo comes back. He flirted with some head coaching opportunities. He was a finalist for the Arizona Cardinals head coaching job. And Brian Callahan, your offensive coordinator, also had some head coaching opportunities. And both of these guys, most likely, since they were finalists for a couple of these jobs, they most likely won't be around next year. They probably will get head coaching opportunities elsewhere. So this is probably going to be the last year that you're going to have both of the coordinators that you hired if you're Zach Taylor. So there's going to be a lot of camaraderie there. You're going to have players who are going to be in the same system once again, not really having to learn a new playbook or anything. So the fact that you have both of your coordinators coming back is a plus. You're going to have a really good offensive line, which is going to be another plus. And hopefully Joe Burrow is going to be healthy. Like I said, at the time this is being recorded, Joe Burrow just went down with a calf injury. They are saying that this is a calf strain. So hopefully nothing worse comes of this injury. We don't have any news that Joe Burrow has an Achilles injury. He's out for the season. So at the time this is being recorded, Joe Burrow, still in my mind, is going to be able to go this year. And with this defense, we know that Luanarumo always has fantastic defenses anytime they play some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes have given Luanarumo a lot of praise for how well prepared he always has his defenses going into the big games. And their defense this year, they have some concerns on the secondary. You lost two of your starters at safety last year in Jesse Bates, Von Bell to free agency. But I'm a really big believer in Dax Hill. When he was coming out of the 2022 NFL draft, this dude was one of the most athletic players coming out. This dude has insane athleticism. This dude's like a pinball ball. He goes doom, 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 doom. And plus, he brings a lot of versatility to the Bengals defense. He can play in the box. He can play in the slot. You can use him as another linebacker. He's a jack of all trades at the safety spot. And then you got Nick Scott, who you signed in free agency, who used to play for the LA Rams. He spent a couple of seasons with them. He had a pretty big role during their Super Bowl run. Even though he wasn't a starter, he still did get a good amount of snaps. So your safety position should be pretty set. And if Nick Scott doesn't work out, you still do have Jordan Battle, who can play either or, free safety or strong safety. And I'm looking at what they have at corner. Chidobe Awuzie is coming back fully healthy. One of the most underrated cornerbacks in the NFL. Cam Taylor-Britt, hopefully he has a breakout season. But you look at the defensive line, that's really what a lot of people overlook when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals. We know how good Joe Burrow and this offense is, and we know how good Chidobe Awuzie is. But do you know about DJ Reader? Do you know that DJ Reader has been one of the best interior defensive linemen in the NFL since he was playing for the Houston Texans? He's one of the biggest reasons for why the Bengals defense has been as good as what it's been under Luanarumo. And then you got a really underrated pass rushing duo. You got Trey Hendrickson, FAU alum, but nobody gives enough praise to Sam Hubbard. Sam Hubbard is really underrated. And when you think about some of the better pass rushing duos in the NFL, you gotta give Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard their respects. Now, a knock that people use against Cincinnati being able to make it out of the AFC is that oh, they're in the toughest division, arguably in the NFL, the AFC North, the Ravens, the Steelers, even the Browns are going to be good this year. Yes, this division has gotten tougher, but have the Cincinnati Bengals gotten worse? Ask yourself that. This division has gotten tougher, but the Bengals haven't gotten worse. As a matter of fact, you can say that the Bengals got better with the addition of Orlando Brown. That was their biggest Achilles heel on the offensive line, that they didn't have a great left tackle. You get that figured out. Your right tackle position still is in the state of flux, but your offensive line is better going into this season than what it was your last 2 seasons or your last 3 seasons. However long the Bengals offensive line has been bad, you finally should have an answer to that. And with you having a better offensive line this year, you should be a better team this year. And although it would be small improvement, having a good left tackle means a lot. And the reason why having a good left tackle means a lot in today's NFL is because you're going against some of the best pass rushers in the league. So you're going to need your left tackle to be able to keep your quarterback upright, especially in the AFC North, home to some of the best defensive lines and best pass rushers in the NFL. You play against Myles Garrett and TJ Watt twice a year. So if you don't have good offensive line play, you're not going to go far. And what the Bengals have done over the last couple of years is something that most franchises won't be able to pull off in the foreseeable future. You're not going to go as far as what the Bengals have in the postseason with how bad their offensive line has been the last 2 years. So even though the Ravens, Steelers, and Browns are all really good teams, the Browns, Ravens could be Super Bowl contenders this year, I still think that the Bengals are still a good enough team where even if they don't win this division, they can still make a run in the playoffs. Let's not act like the Bengals haven't proven themselves. They have nothing to prove. They don't need to win this division to be able to make it to the playoffs. All right? They can make it into the playoffs, not winning this division, and all they got to do is make a deep playoff run. And they've already beaten Joe Burrow. They've already beaten Patrick Mahomes at Arrowhead before. So there's no reason why they can't do it again this year. I don't think Kansas City is a better team this year than what they were last year. As a matter of fact, I think they could potentially be a little bit worse. And you look at the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Browns, all really talented teams, but the Bengals have Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow is the second best quarterback in the game for a reason. And they got a great squad. So even though the other teams in this division have gotten better also, the Bengals haven't been stagnant. So I think that this is the Bengals' best opportunity to win the Super Bowl. Chicago Bears outlook for the 2023 NFL season. How good will the Chicago Bears be this year? Now, there's a lot riding on Justin Fields going into this season. And pretty much if you're a Chicago Bears fan right now, this is your mindset. We're a playoff team because Justin Fields is going to hit his strides this season in the make or break season. And if Justin Fields ends up hitting his potential and he ends up taking those next steps this year, like what Jalen Hurts did in 2022 with the Philadelphia Eagles, not only is this going to be a playoff team, but they possibly could contend for this division. And obviously, you look at where the Packers are at, you don't really think they're going to have a chance. But you look at the Minnesota Vikings and the Detroit Lions, these look to be the 2 best teams in the NFC North. And for the Chicago Bears, if Justin Fields ends up developing and becomes anything close to what Jalen Hurts was last year, Chicago can very easily win this division. This team is not as bad as what a lot of people may think. Their offensive line was awful last year, but they do have a pretty good left tackle. And they finally solved their answer at right tackle in drafting Darnell Wright out of Tennessee, who was my #1 ranked offensive tackle coming out of this past year's draft. And then you also signed offensive guard Nate Davis in free agency from Tennessee, and he pretty much was the Titans' best offensive lineman last year. The Chicago Bears are going into this season with a lot of expectation that this offensive line is going to be improved and that Justin Fields is going to take the next step. But what's going to help Justin Fields take that next step this season as a quarterback. It's going to be the fact that you finally have given him a legitimate number one wide receiver. It really, really pisses me off that people talk down on Justin Fields like he just had this great situation. New coaching staff, learning a new playbook with the worst offensive line in the NFL. I don't give a damn if you can say, well, Justin Fields has a tendency to hold the ball long sometimes. It's like, who cares? Dude had the worst offensive line in the league, and nobody can deny that. Bears, Broncos, either or, you can make the argument had the worst offensive line in the NFL. It's like, you can't get mad at a young quarterback for trying to make a play. And you can't put a young quarterback in that situation and expect them to be successful. Yeah, he may hold the ball a little bit longer to make plays, but let's not make it seem like Justin Fields just had this great offensive line and he was the reason why it looked so bad. The offensive line was not good. You want to know why the Chicago Bears didn't want to throw the football a lot? Because Justin Fields had a terrible offensive line and a terrible group of wide receivers to throw the football to. So the only thing he could do was run the football, which also happened to be the only thing that the Bears could do was run the football at a really high level. Justin Fields has a lot of confidence from the Chicago Bears fan base, as he should. Bears fans should have a lot of confidence in Justin Fields because unlike the national media, you've watched Justin Fields last season and you've seen the receivers that he was throwing to, such as Dante Pettis and unanimously St. Brown. And you know good doggone well that Justin Fields was set up to fail last season. So you have a lot of high expectations for Justin Fields having a better offensive line and DJ Moore to throw the football to. You're going to have DJ Moore, arguably the most underrated wide receiver in the NFL at this moment. This dude has put up so many productive seasons with the Carolina Panthers having a no-name at QB pretty much. So you look at what he can do with Justin Fields. Justin Fields may be the best quarterback that DJ Moore has played with up to this point in his NFL career. You're going to have Darnell Mooney coming back fully healthy. You just paid Cole Kmet. You gave him a really lucrative extension. And he was really underrated last year. Did you know that Cole Kmet caught, 7 touchdowns last season in 2022? Where was this? Where was Cole Kmet, this reliable option in the passing game for the Chicago Bears? Because I didn't see it all that often when I was watching the Bears play. And I had him on my fantasy team too. Not just Justin Fields. So it's like he kind of came out of nowhere during the second half of last season. Now, if he can bring how he played the end of last season into this season, and you couple that with DJ Moore and having a healthy Darnell Mooney at wide receiver, this is going to be a really nice passing attack. A really nice passing attack. And with this offensive line, getting some reinforcements to help out Timothy Fields, Justin Fields should look like him this season. Now, the defense was really bad last season. Really bad. And it's really concerning when you think that Matt Eberflus, what is he? A defensive-minded coach or offensive-minded coach? He's a defensive-minded coach. He was a defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. And anytime you specialize on a particular side of the football, you expect that to be one of the best parts of your team, not your worst. And the defense, unfortunately, was really bad for the Chicago Bears last year. I mean, they ranked near last in every statistical category on defense. Outside of passing yards per game allowed, they were 31st against the run. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback, and they allowed the most points in the NFL per game last year. And a lot of yards. So how is the Bears defense going to be this year compared to last year? Well, on paper, this should be a better defense. You sign linebackers TJ Edwards and Tremaine Edmonds in free agency. Tremaine Edmonds got paid a lot of money. He's a really good linebacker. I think he's a little bit overhated. Some people call him overrated. I say he's overhated, rhyming accidentally, because I really like Tremaine Edmonds' game. I think he's really good against the run, and he's also pretty solid in coverage. And TJ Edwards was a stud for the Philadelphia Eagles last season. So you improve your linebacker position, which was a really big reason why your run defense was so bad. Now, you look at the secondary. I think that this secondary is going to be absolutely fantastic this season for the Chicago Bears. I think that this is a really underrated secondary that the Bears have going into the 2023 NFL season. Eddie Jackson, yeah, he's not what he used to be, but I still think he's serviceable. Jaquan Brisker, he's coming up. Like Jalen Petrie, I think that Jaquan Brisker is going to be a monster this year. And this is pretty much the only defensive player that most non-Chicago Bears fans can name on this roster from last season. I really like the addition of bringing in rookie cornerback Tyreek Stevenson from the University of Miami. He was making a lot of noise throughout Senior Bowl. He was really solid during the Combine. And you listen to the early impressions about Tyreek Stevenson. Most Bears fans and reporters that cover this team or really follow this team in depth more than me believe that he's going to be a day one starter. He's that good. And you pair him alongside of Kyler Gordon and Jalen Johnson. This is quietly a really sneaky good secondary that the Bears have going into this year. But what about the pass rush, JT? Are the Bears going to be able to get pressure on the quarterback? Because they tried everything last season to get pressure on the QB, and it just didn't work. And I don't know if the pass rush is going to be all that improved this year. Now, they did draft a couple of guys that I like, but none of them, I think, are going to be day one impact guys. I think they're more developmental guys. They did sign DeMarcus Walker in free agency. He's an edge rusher. He's been more of a rotational piece or a solid pass rusher at times, but not a guy who's going to be your number one pass rusher who you know is going to consistently give you 8-9 sacks consistently a season. Now, with him going to the Chicago Bears, he isn't breaking the bank, and this could be a situation where he could end up being in for a breakout season. New opportunity, new head coach. And I've always been a big supporter of DeMarcus Walker because he's from my hometown, so we're always going to have a little bit of bias towards him. But overall, looking at the Chicago Bears as a team, this team's success is largely going to hinge on how good Justin Fields is this season. If Justin Fields struggles, the Bears are going to struggle. If he plays well, the Bears are going to play well. And even though football is a team sport, not one player can affect the outcome. The quarterback position has the strongest. I think that the quarterback position, even though it's a team sport, it's still dependent on how well he plays. Okay, if your quarterback plays well, you're going to win the majority of your games. And if he doesn't, you're going to lose the majority of your games. The Bears don't have one of those kinds of teams that is going to be able to survive having bad QB play or even average quarterback play. If Justin Fields is average this year, the Bears probably aren't going to win no more than 5 games this season. But if he plays well, this should be a playoff team. The NFC is not that tough. Justin Fields, if he elevates like how a lot of Bears fans are hoping that he will, this team should at least, at worst, be able to get one of the last playoff spots in this conference. This conference doesn't have great quarterbacks all loaded out division by division like the AFC does. The best QB in the NFC going into this year, at least right now, is Jalen Hurts, and it's nobody else close after him. Justin Fields elevates, takes that next step in his development. This is a team that should be a wild card team. Now, I don't know how far they can go after the wild card round. If they make it, maybe they can win a divisional game. But I think wild card probably is the best case scenario for the Chicago Bears if they put everything together. And maybe they could end up winning this division. The Lions are far from a complete team, and the Vikings, they have a lot of question marks on defense. You're hoping that Brian Flores can, kind of plug up some of those holes with how good of a coach he is, but you don't really know. But when you think about the quarterback position, although they don't completely impact the full outcome of how a game goes, they have the largest influence and largest impact on how well the team plays. Because if your quarterback plays well, your team is going to be put in a lot of situations to win. But if you have a bad QB, your team has to be able to carry that guy and pick him up when he ends up putting the team in bad situations. So the Chicago Bears this season, I got them winning 9 games. I got them making it into the playoffs. So you guys let me know, what are your expectations? What is your outlook on the Chicago Bears going into the 2023 NFL season? I want to talk about my 5 running backs going into the 2023 NFL season that are primed for a breakout season. Now, these are not in order, so don't think I'm putting these in order from best to worst. Like, all these guys who are listed, I think are going to be stellar running backs this season. And we're starting off with Dalvin Cook's replacement, Alexander Mattison. And I've been waiting hell of years to finally see the opportunity that Alexander Mattison goes in as the RB1 for the Minnesota Vikings. For all of my Madden players out here, you know how much of a beast this dude is in your Madden franchise. But how good is he in real life? He's a monster. This dude, first of all, is 5'11", 215 pounds. He's a tank. Now, he doesn't have the kind of explosiveness or acceleration and agility that Dalvin Cook has, but this dude is a true power back. He's going to run through you. He's going to break a lot of tackles. He's going to put your you-know-what on the ground. I love watching Alexander Mattison play, and a good thing about him is that although he's been Dalvin Cook's backup for the last couple of years, he doesn't have a lot of mileage. You're having somebody that is coming into this year at most having 134 carries in a single season. He also is averaging over 4 yards per attempt, which is also really good. And the fact that he's 215, 5'11", I think that that's going to help the Minnesota Vikings out a lot when they get into those 3rd and short situations or when they get inside the red zone. Dalvin Cook, he's a do-it-all back, but I don't think he has the kind of skill set as a power back that Alexander Mattison possesses. And Alexander Mattison, he's explosive in his own right. He has pretty good acceleration. Now, he isn't going to hit it into top gear. He's not going to go 0 to 100 like Dalvin Cook is able to do, but he is able to hit top speed pretty fast. Now, his top speed isn't as fast as Dalvin Cook's. He doesn't have the speed or acceleration that Dalvin has, but this dude is more powerful. He's somebody that every time he gets the rock, you're going to hear some pass stumping. You're going to hear somebody getting put on their butt. That's why I love Alexander Mattison. That's why he's the first running back on this list for me. If you are somebody who's playing fantasy football, you need to be looking for Alexander Mattison as a late round pickup. I've been getting him in round 6, 7 in my fantasy draft. Now, I've also seen some people take him as early as round 4 or 5. So depending on how deep your league is, you need to go ahead and get your hands on Alexander Mattison whenever you see fit. This is somebody who's going to be a RB1 this year or RB2 at best. I don't think he's one of those players that gets overhyped in the offseason and then you draft him in fantasy football and he does nothing like Cam Akers did last season. I actually believe that Alexander Mattison is going to put up some really great numbers for the Minnesota Vikings this season. And also ask yourself this: if you are somebody who's a little bit skeptical about drafting him on your fantasy squad, who's behind him at running back that's really going to take reps from him? Nobody. And the reason why I think Alexander Mattison is a player that a lot of people need to hop on the bandwagon for as we get closer to the NFL season is because most people are going to realize that the majority of these running back rooms now are committee. So if you are one of those people in fantasy football who like to avoid drafting running backs that have to share reps with other RBs, Alexander Mattison is your guy. Now, Next up, we are going to have to go with a guy who I was a big fan of coming out of college, in James Cook. He was drafted in the second round of the 2022 NFL draft by the Bills, coming out of Georgia. He helped lead Georgia to the national championship before they ended up going back-to-back. He's really explosive, has great acceleration. He has great hands catching out of the backfield. And he also runs pretty good routes to be a running back. And he had a pretty promising rookie season for the Buffalo Bills last season. You hope that he can get better with his ball security. But outside of that, I mean, there's nothing that James Cook can't do as a running back. Outside of being the RB that you're going to give goal line carries to or short yardage work to. That's what they got Damian Harris for. James Cook, he can do everything. Catch the ball, really explosive. You're not going to run him 15, 20 times a game up the middle. But it's not like the Buffalo Bills do a lot of running anyway, or at least doing it at a productive level outside of utilizing Josh Allen. When it comes to James Cook, he could finally fix their issue at running back. The problem that the Bills offense has had is that they get too overly dependent on Josh Allen. Devin Singletary is not that great, and it pains me to say that, given the fact that he comes from FAU. But you look at James Cook, this dude is explosive. Every knock that Bills fans had on Devin Singletary, you're going to see the complete opposite when it comes to James Cook. This is somebody who gets it. He's downhill with it. Now, he's not somebody who you really want to give a lot of carries to when it comes to running the football up the middle, but you get him involved on some outside zone or just find a way to get him the ball in space, and this is where he thrives at. And I think that he's a better receiver than what Dalvin Cook is. And Dalvin Cook is not too shabby in the pass catching department himself. And you look at what James Cook's rookie numbers were looking like: 89 carries on 507 rushing yards and 5.7 yards per attempt. Do you know how ridiculous that is? I don't care if you had less than 100 carries. You was averaging 5 yards per attempt. Not having a lot of work, that shows how good you are as a running back. When you get limited opportunities and you still have a yards per carry average of over 5, nearly 6, that's impressive. That shows a lot about how good you are, because running backs, if you're a backup RB and you're not seeing a lot of touches and you got a really low yards per carry average, I don't really think that's a good sign. I think running backs that are really effective are the ones that can do a lot of damage, not needing to get 20, 25 touches every single game. James Cook is one of those backs that you get him 15 touches and he's a guy that's probably going to give you 4 receptions for 50 yards receiving, and then he's also going to give you 102 on the ground on like 10 carries. This dude is explosive. This dude has 0 to 100 acceleration. He got a lot of comparisons coming out of Georgia to Alvin Kamara. And if you go and you watch a little bit of his film or just watch some highlights from his rookie season, you will understand why. He's a carbon copy of Alvin Kamara. The Bills can utilize him the same way that the Saints use Alvin Kamara in their offense. Lining him out wide in a slot, utilize him as a mismatch for linebackers, because a lot of linebackers aren't going to be good enough to cover James Cook due to how nuanced he is as a route runner. And plus, he's a Florida boy. Us Florida boys, we're a different breed. You put us in the NFL and we're going to succeed no matter where we're at. Love James Cook, man. Don't sleep on James Cook. I'm surprised at the amount of people who aren't really talking all that much about James Cook. There are people talking about him a little bit more due to the injury to Nyheim Hines, but even if he was healthy, I still think that James Cook was going to get the bulk of the workload in this offense. I think he is the most talented running back that the Buffalo Bills have on their roster. He currently is the only running back they have on their roster at this moment that's good enough to be able to have a significant impact in the passing game. Rachaad White coming in as my third running back that will break out this season. Now, unlike James Cook and Alexander Mattison, a lot of people who play fantasy football that are watching this should already be a little bit hip to Rachaad White. Now, Rachaad White was one of my favorite rookie running backs last season. I was on him heavy when he got drafted by the Bucs. We actually got a video about Rachaad White. Go ahead and check it out. One thing about Rachaad White is that he isn't the kind of back that Alexander Mattison is, but he is really good in the passing game. As a matter of fact, he is better than any other running back on this list when it comes to what he brings to the passing game department. Very good hands. He was pretty much the safety blanket for Tom Brady last season, and he's pretty much going to be a big factor in the passing offense for the Buccaneers this year, because they're going to have Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask starting for them at quarterback, and those are QBs that are probably going to be checking down to Rachaad White pretty often because the offensive line is in a little bit of influx. Now, Rachaad White, he may not have the rushing production that James Cook and Alexander Mattison are potentially going to have this year, but I think he's going to do a lot more in the passing game than what Cook and Mattison are going to do. Rachaad White is a better pass catcher than both of those two running backs, and plus, I think that he's a better pass catcher, at least last season he was, than what he was as a true running back. Now, I do like his vision, but the thing that kind of, annoys me about Rachaad White is that I don't really think he's a great running back after contact like Alexander Mattison is. And I think that kind of does hurt him. But outside of that, Rachaad White, he's really explosive. You give him the ball on the outside, he could take it to the house anytime. You also look at the fact that he's going to get a lot of work in the passing game. Even though the Buccaneers offensive line looks really crappy, you should still pick him up on your fantasy football squads just because of the impact he's going to bring when it comes to catching passes and all the numbers that he's going to rack up for you when it comes to receptions, yards in the passing game. I think he's going to be one of the best pass catching backs in the NFL this season, which is why I have him on this list. A lot of people, I don't think, are sleeping on Rachaad White. He had a really good rookie season, 129 carries, averaged 3.7 yards per attempt, and he was doing this with 481 total rushing yards. And you see the yards per carry at 3.7. I think that kind of tells you a little bit of what you need to know about the Buccaneers offensive line situation. Now, the difference is that they are going to be running a new system. They got a new offensive coordinator, and he's going to be running a little bit more outside zone, which is a little bit more something that's suited for Rachaad White's skill set. I don't think Rachaad White is one of those running backs that you give them 10, 15 touches up the middle and they're going to be able to handle that kind of workload. Same thing with James Cook. I think they have a little bit of a similar running style. They're not those running backs that are going to beat you up when every time you got to come tackle them. They're running backs that I don't really think they do a lot after contact. I think they're running backs that can make you miss in the open field with their elusiveness and their agility and how good they are catching the football out of the backfield, and the fact that they're a running back matched up against a DB, which is kind of a mismatch more times than not, depending on how good they are after contact. But I like Rachaad White, though. I think he's going to bring a lot of value to this Buccaneers offense in the passing game. I think that this is somebody who could have 80, 70 receptions. He also probably is going to have 600, maybe 700 receiving yards. And when it comes to his production in the run game, even though their offensive line isn't going to be that great, the fact that he's the unquestioned RB1 and he doesn't really have anybody behind him that's really going to be able to challenge him, he's going to get a good amount of workload that he's going to be able to be a serviceable starter for you if you pick him up in fantasy football. And I think his rushing numbers are probably going to be like 700, 800-ish. He'll probably have 5, maybe 6 touchdowns at most. I really can't see him getting more than 6 touchdowns because of how bad this offensive line is. So I like Rachaad White. He has pretty good size, and when you look at his size, you think, man, JT, like, you sure this dude isn't really a power back? Like, not really his skill set. He's not running those running backs like Alexander Mattison. You're going to give him the football, he's going to tote that rock up the middle, and he's going to put a lot of defenders on the ass. Like, he's not that kind of running back. He's that kind of running back that you got to give him the ball, let him work in space. So I like that about Rachaad White. Even though Rachaad White, he isn't on a great team, he's not with a great situation, he doesn't have a good offensive line or a good QB, which is a big red flag when it comes to evaluating running backs from a fantasy football standpoint. I think he's going to give you enough production in the passing game, and overall he should be serviceable enough as a running back that he should be able to keep you afloat in your fantasy football leagues if you end up starting him in the flex or as your RB2. Now, overall, when it comes to a real-life football standpoint, this is somebody who probably could be a Pro Bowler for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I mean, outside of Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, there's nothing to be excited about when it comes to this offense outside of Rachaad White. Rachaad White, he's going to be one of those players that just has one of those seasons that makes you go, damn, like he was good, but nobody's talking about him. You want to know why? Because he's going to be playing for the Buccaneers. Rachaad White could have an Austin Eckler kind of season where he has like 15 total yards from scrimmage, including his receiving and rushing numbers. And I think that a large reason why he's going to break out is because of how good he is catching the football out of the backfield, and the fact that you got Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask possibly starting at quarterback. They're probably going to be throwing a lot of checkdowns to him. DeAndre Swift is next. I think a lot of people have kind of written off DeAndre Swift because I've been getting him late in my fantasy football drafts. And in terms of a real life standpoint, DeAndre Swift is really good. Really good. You're looking at a running back that is really good catching the football out of the backfield. He's also a really good runner, really tough. And the thing that has kind of held him back from becoming one of the better running backs in the league has been injuries. He's played 3 seasons for the Detroit Lions prior to getting traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and he can do it all. He averages 4.6 yards per carry. He has 18 total touchdowns up to this point of his career, 156 receptions, and over 1,000 receiving yards to go with over 1,000 career rushing yards. So this is a do-it-all back. He's really powerful. He's not known as a guy who's going to knock you back, but he isn't the easiest guy to bring down. He is pretty physical. You look at his size. He is currently listed at over, hold on, I can't even find where his weight is, man. But I can't look at his official weight because I didn't write it down on my notes. But I do think that DeAndre Swift is pretty big. Let me look it up real quick. DeAndre Swift weight. He is 216 pounds. So yeah, he's pretty big as I thought. He's 6 something. He's 5'9", 216 pounds. So I'm not tripping. Yeah, so he is pretty big. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I actually met DeAndre Swift in person at a camp a couple of years back. So DeAndre Swift is pretty big. I don't think a lot of people know that about DeAndre Swift. It's like you look at him on TV and you like, man, like he's more of a pass catching back. Like, no, like DeAndre Swift is a really physical back. Really physical back. I really love his game, and him going to the Philadelphia Eagles, if he can stay healthy behind that offensive line with the talent that's around him, he's going to be better than what Miles Sanders was. Miles Sanders isn't a bad back. He's okay, but DeAndre Swift could potentially be one of the better running backs that we have in the NFL because he truly can do it all. He's a pretty physical back. He also is pretty explosive, so you can run him inside, outside the tackles. He can catch passes out of the backfield. There's really no reason why you should have to take DeAndre Swift off the field, unless that's due to him getting injured. So I love the DeAndre Swift. I think he's going to be in for a breakout season. He hasn't broken out yet because I don't really think he's had a breakout-worthy season, or at least one that you can consider being breakout worthy. But if he can stay healthy for the Philadelphia Eagles this season, I think he could be a Pro Bowler, and he could be one of the more underrated pickups from this past offseason. And lastly, I got Jerome Ford. Now, he's a backup. He's going to be RB2 behind Nick Chubb this year. You may be wondering, JT, why the hell do you have a backup running back on this list? This is a breakout list. This is a list full of guys who are going to break out this year and put the league on notice. And listen, he's a backup, but you got to remember that the Browns run the football a lot. And Kareem Hunt got a good amount of action last season. And I think the reason why they let Kareem Hunt go is because they drafted Jerome Ford. Jerome Ford was always in line to be Kareem Hunt's replacement. From where they drafted him in the 5th round of last year's draft. I don't think too many people expected Jerome Ford to get drafted after round 3. So the Browns getting him in round 5 was a huge steal. This dude has great size And even though he's a physical back who's known as a bruiser, he's also pretty nifty. He's also pretty shifty for his size. He's 5'11", 220 pounds. And if you watch some of his highlights when he was coming out of Cincinnati, this dude is a monster. Great vision, great acceleration. Now, when he ends up hitting the accelerator and he gets to his top speed, he isn't somebody that's just going to, pull away from defenders. Defenders do catch up to him pretty often. But I do think that he has enough speed that if you give him some open field, he can make you pay. He's not one of those guys that's going to always get hawked in. But I love Jerome Ford. I'm a huge fan of his game. Great vision, very powerful back, great balance. I don't know how this guy got drafted outside of the first 2 rounds of last year's draft, but he's going to be a stud for the Cleveland Browns. And you know that the Cleveland Browns already have an eye for running backs. So I think Jerome Ford is going to have a pretty big season for the Cleveland Browns, even though it's not going to be on the level of some of these other running backs. But I think Jerome Ford is going to be so good this year that some fans are going to be looking at him and they're going to say, man, like, we got some running back issues. We need to go ahead and trade for him. He's Cleveland's backup. So in terms of a fantasy football perspective, for those of you guys wondering, how would I rank these guys? Who should you target first? I would target Alexander Mattison first, just because he's going to get more touchdowns. He's going to get most of the goal line work for the Minnesota Vikings. Then after Alexander Mattison is off the board, I will go after Rachaad White. Now, I know it seemed like I was kind of banking or bagging on Rachaad White a little bit earlier, but I'm telling you guys the truth. I want to give you guys an honest evaluation why I think these players are going to break out. I don't think Rachaad White is going to break out because he's a great running back per se. I think he's going to break out because of what he brings from a pass catching standpoint. And I think with the Buccaneers QB situation, he's somebody that's going to get spam targets on a consistent basis. So make sure you definitely pick up Rachaad White, even though I don't think he's going to have great numbers when it comes to what he does on the ground for the Buccaneers. It's not like he's going to do anything, because who else do they have that's going to take away his goal line carries? You feel me? Who's going to take away legitimate snaps from Rachaad White when he's their most skilled back? Even last year, Leonard Fournette was a better power back than Rachaad White, and he was used in more short yardage situations. But Rachaad White last season, he was so good that it was kind of hard to keep him off the field because he was just so better and brought more to the table than Leonard Fournette. So I think the reason why Rachaad White's production is going to be a little bit down in the run game department isn't more so because he's not a great running back, but simply for the fact that the Buccaneers offensive line isn't going to be that good. It's going to be really shaky. So I think you probably aren't going to get, I don't think you're going to get a lot from him from a ground game perspective. Like I said, I think that a lot of his production is going to come from what he does in the passing game. I think he's somebody who can have 700, 800 receiving yards and give you 600, 700 on the ground, which could give you a season where he has 1,400 total all-purpose yards, similar to Travis Etienne. Like, did you guys watch Travis Etienne with the Jacksonville Jaguars last year? If you did, that's how I think Rachaad White is going to do. Rachaad White is Travis Etienne, but I think less explosive. Great vision, good acceleration, but he doesn't really have breakaway speed. And I just think as a runner, he has a couple of more things he has to improve on with their offensive line. It won't be that great, but from a pass catching standpoint, he might be the second best pass catching back in the league next season based on production, right behind either a guy like Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Alvin Kamara, or Austin Eckler. I think he's going to be that good. I think he's going to be a great scat back. I think he's going to be a top 3, top 5 scat back next year in terms of guys who can do everything. Running, catching the ball out of the backfield. That's why you should draft Rachaad White in your fantasy football leagues. If you're somebody who's used to running backs that, they get a lot of workload, they're getting it downhill, they're north and south, Alexander Mattison is your guy. But Rachaad White, though, he's going to get a lot of his production in the passing game. James Cook, I think he's going to have more success on the ground than Rachaad White. Now, I don't think he's going to be a 1,000-yard guy. I don't know if he'll get that much work. I don't know if the Bills offense is capable of producing a 1,000-yard running back, but I think he can have 1,000 all-purpose yards as well. I don't think he's going to be utilized as much as Rachaad White in the passing game, simply due to the fact that you got Stephon Diggs, you got Gabe Davis out of UCF. You got two really good tight ends, Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid. So I don't really think he's going to have a lot of work in the passing game due to how much weaponry is out there at receiver. And plus, Josh Allen is one of the best QBs in the game, so he's not going to throw as many checkdowns as a guy like Baker Mayfield or Kyle Trask may have, which is why I think Rachaad White is going to be better when it comes to a number standpoint, when it comes to pass catching. But overall, James Cook is probably the better running back right now, in my opinion. So I would take him over Rachaad White in terms of a skill set standpoint. Production standpoint, they may be on the same page. I think Rachaad White is probably going to have more touchdowns than James Cook, because James Cook isn't going to have the touchdown workload as a guy like Rachaad White is going to have, because you got Damian Harris there, who's going to be the short yardage red zone back. Now, DeAndre Swift, the reason why I would have him under Rachaad White, James Cook, and Alexander Mattison is because you don't know how healthy he's going to be. And plus, the Philadelphia Eagles also signed Rashard Penny, who is somebody who has a really lengthy history of being able to not stay on the field. So we're going to see if Rashard Penny can stay healthy. Now, if Rashard Penny can stay healthy, it kind of puts a little bit of a curveball in things. Because if he stays healthy, then he's probably going to get a little bit of workload. Not as much as DeAndre Swift regardless, but he probably could chip into DeAndre Swift red zone and short yardage carries. And Jerome Ford, I don't really think you should be picking him up if you plan on playing fantasy football. If you want to pick him up just because you're a Browns fan, just to have him as, you know, a backup option in case something happens to Nick Chubb or a handcuff, that's what they call it, then go ahead. But I don't really think Jerome Ford is going to be good enough to draft in a fantasy football standpoint. But from a real life standpoint, I think he may end up being more talented than all these running backs on this list, man. Like, Jerome Ford is really that dude. As a pure running back, he may not be as good as a pass catcher as Rachaad White, DeAndre Swift, or James Cook, but he's a monster, fam. You better go watch some Jerome Ford highlights, bro. I was a big fan of his coming out of Cincinnati. I thought he was the second best running back coming out of that draft class. Honestly, that dude is a beast. They got Kenneth Gainwell there too. Somebody let me know that in the comment section. But I think Kenneth Gainwell is more of a gadget player. He's going to be more somebody that they use on, you know, trick plays. Maybe if they want to get some speed out there. But I think DeAndre Swift is a better overall running back. I think that him and Rashard Penny probably will get the majority of the carries there at running back. But this is it for my 5 running backs that will break out this season. Let me know what you guys think about this list down in the comment section down below. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast, man. This was a very long episode, man. We got a lot of news that we had to talk about. I tried to get started at 5 o'clock, but I took a nap and I didn't wake up at the right time, so my apologies for that. That's why we started a little bit late. Plus, there was a lot of news coming out, so I didn't know there was going to be so much news that I would have to throw into the show, so that kind of altered a lot of things. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me. If you are new and haven't already, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications. We go live every day, Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern time, talking NFL, college football, XFL, USFL. You never know what we're going to talk about when it comes to American football over here on JT Sports. But make sure you like, subscribe, turn on post notifications if you're new. Rate us 5 stars. Remember that the JT Sports Podcast is available on all podcasting platforms, not just on YouTube. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcasts from. You can find us. Rate us 5 stars. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. Instagram at JT Sports _ threads at JT Sports _ Follow us on X. I know you see the Twitter logo, but it's X now. It's not called Twitter. It's called X. At JT Sports _ or you can go down to the description down below and follow us via those links. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys tomorrow for the Friday episode of the JT Sports Podcast.